Alright guys, this is worksheet 3, side A. And we're going to talk about geometric sequences. Just a few examples here. A geometric sequence could look like this. Alright, hang on, I'm not sure what's going on with my... Okay, geometric sequence could look like this. Geometric sequence could look like this. All right, what's going on? Anybody know what it means to be geometric? What? You're multiplying or dividing by a common term, which division is really multiplying by a reciprocal, right? So you're multiplying by something every time. The fancy definition is an ordered list of numbers and remember those are called the terms with a common ratio, which is a fancy way of saying you're multiplying by something. To find that common ratio, for this one, you could take any term and divide by the previous one. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. Does that continue? Times 2 times 2, right? But I could also start anywhere. I could take negative 1 divided by 2. And this one would be negative 1/2. Does that work for the whole way through? Okay, and it is dividing by negative 2, but we write it as the ratio is negative 1/2, okay? And this one, can you tell what they're dividing by or multiplying by? Okay, multiplying by 1/3. So to find the common ratio, you take any term and divide it by the previous term, and that should give you the ratio. Okay, any term divided by the previous term should give you the ratio. That's kind of messy. Got it? So how can we... Ooh, anybody remember what explicit meant when we did this last week? Explicit means it's based on the term number. So it's the kind that if you have the explicit form and I want the 15th term, you just put in n equals 15. Does that sound familiar? All right, let's think about this for a minute. The arithmetic looked like this. It said take the first term and add the difference n minus 1 times. What do you think the geometric's going to look like? What is that thing we're multiplying by called? R. And if I said my sequence was 5 and I'm going to multiply by 1/2 and then I'm going to multiply by 1/2 again. This is 5 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. If I want the 12th term, I multiply by 1/2 11 times. N minus 1. Am I multiplying by n minus 1? How do you say I'm multiplying over and over by something? Okay, twice is squared. we need a power of n minus 1. There you go. Okay? Everybody get that? You would multiply, if you wanted the 12th term, you would multiply by the ratio 11 times. And the ratio 11 times is the ratio to the 11th power. Everybody all right? Repeated addition is called multiplication, but repeated multiplication is called an exponent power, right? Okay. Do we need to write what any of that is? N is the term number. A sub 1 is the first term, right? R is the common ratio. We all good? Okay. What is a recursive form? Let me make up something here. Okay. Okay, the ratio is 2/3. Journey figured that out. How do you write the recursive form? Do you remember what that means? Good job. It's based on the previous term. And what does that mean, previous term? So you write a sub n equals, how do you write previous term? What's the one before a sub n? A sub n minus 1. And if it's geometric, what are you doing over and over? Multiplying by, what do we call that thing? R. Where you also have to always tell me the first term. Okay. So can you give me the recursive form of this one right here? A sub n equals a sub n minus 1 times 2/3, where a sub 1 is 7. Can anybody give me the explicit form for that same one? A sub n equals? Okay, can I make this 14/3? Can I multiply those together? No, because this has a power and this has a power of 1, right? The only time you could combine those, and I don't know if I'll come up with one today, there might be one in the examples, but if it said you're going to start with 5 and then you're going to keep multiplying by 5, could we simplify that? You can't make it 25 to the n minus 1, but how could you simplify it? What do you do when you have a common base? What do you do with the exponents? Add them. So this is really, okay. So you could simplify only if they had a common base or that could be written with a common base. All right. Is this geometric? Yes or no? If it is, find the common ratio. Now, some of these can be tricky. Remember, any number divided by the previous term should be that ratio, right? And it should be the same all the way through. Is that working? Yes, this has a common ratio, and that ratio is -1/2. Anytime your sequence goes positive, negative, or negative, positive, you have to be multiplying by a power of a negative number. All right. So if I take the second term divided by the first, I get 1/2. But what if I do -20/3 divided by -10? I get 2/3. Is that a common ratio? That one's negative 15 over negative 20, or positive 3/4. Not geometric. So if they tell you it's geometric, you just take two terms in a row and divide them, and you figure out what the ratio is, right? All right, so this one is telling you this is a geometric sequence. Find the common ratio and the next three terms. Can you guys do those two? What are they multiplying by here? So the next three terms, let's see, 32 over 81, 64 over 243. How am I doing? 729 is this one, and 128. So the numerator is multiplying by 2 and the denominator is multiplying by 3. Anybody get this one? R is negative 4. So the next three numbers are big. Negative 256 maybe? Did I get that one right? Times 4, 1024. And that would be negative 4096. All right. All right. Given an explicit formula. Well, what do things stand for in an explicit formula? It's the first term times the ratio and minus 1 times. So what is this one telling us? The first term is 2, and the ratio is 6. Could we have found that by just putting in what? N equals 1, N equals 2, N equals 3, N equals 4. That'll give us the first 4 terms. When we put in a 1, 1 minus 1 is 0, 6 to the 0 is 1 times 2 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, 6 to the 1 is 6, times 2 is 12. What are we multiplying by? So then we'd have 72, and I don't know. What is it?
I got 432.
Sounds good. All right, so find the common ratio. It was 6, and the first 4 terms, if you wanted to write them. All right, this one seems like it should be simplified. Can we simplify this? This is a negative 1/4 times a negative 4 and minus 1 times. Does that simplify? Okay, you can't do anything to these because this one is to an exponent power. You actually probably could mess with it a little bit if you wanted, because this is a power of 4, but you can't just make it 1. If you just multiply those together, you get 1 to the n minus 1. What would that sequence look like? 1. 1 to any power is?
1.
So the sequence would go 1, 1, 1. Okay. So what is the common ratio on this one? Negative 4, not 1, because we can't simplify it. And the first term is negative 0.25. They wrote it as a decimal. I don't care if you write it as a fraction. What are we multiplying by then? Negative 4, so the next one will be +1, -4, +16. How did I do?
You are perfect.
That'll be the only problem I get right. All right. This one says find the common ratio and the first 4 terms. Do we already know the first term? -0.5. It tells us right there the first term is. What's the ratio? It says right there to keep multiplying by 2. So the next number, anybody? Is this one going to go negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive?
No.
Here, just multiply by plain old 2, so they're all going to stay negative, right? First 4 terms, yes. Okay. This next one has a ratio of 1/6, so it's like we're dividing by 6. Make sure you count this 108 as the first term. Don't get confused. They gave it to us. It counts as one of the first 4 terms, okay? The next one is 18, and then 18 divided by 6 is 3 divided by 6 is, you could give me a decimal and I don't care. So far, so good. Couple more easy ones. Find the common ratio. So any 2 terms, take the second one divided by the first one. So if we just look right here, what does that divide out to be? And how do we get to the 8th term? We take the first term and multiply by that ratio how many times? To get to the 8th term, we go 7 times. It's n-1. So -0.4 times -5 to the 7th. And you need parentheses. Should it be positive or negative, guys? A negative number to the 7th is going to be negative times another negative will be positive, right? Oh, I switched the 5 and the 7. Is it 31,250?
Yeah.
A sub 8 equals 31,250. Did you put 0.4 or 4?
Oh, I did 0.04.
Oh, yeah, it's 0.4, you're right, but it's not 0.04. Yeah, it's easy to do. So what's the ratio on the next one? R equals 2. So to find the 8th term, what are we going to do? Ooh, 2 to the 7th is... All right, still pretty easy. Find the explicit one. What are they multiplying by this time?
4.
And how do we write the explicit one then? A sub n equals? Nope, that's recursive. This is the one where we put the first term down times r, and I just always put r in parentheses, then n-1. You don't have to have parentheses on this one. Donovan, you alive?
No.
They giving you a heart attack?
Somewhat.
Yeah, I was half asleep last night and my daughter came running in with a question and jumped on my bed and I wasn't pretty. She goes, I didn't know your body could come that far up off the bed. Thank you very much. What are we multiplying by here? There would be other ways to write that because those are both powers of 3. It would just get kind of wonky. We'll just leave it. Oh, we didn't even have to write the ratio, right? Okay. 16, how do you switch from recursive to explicit? Ah, super easy. A sub n equals 16 times 1/2 to the n minus 1. And this one? Okay, is that one going to get credit?
No, there's no parentheses.
Yeah, if it's a negative number, you have to have it in a parenthesis because the exponent applies to the negative, not just... Did we talk about that yet today? This and this are not the same thing, right? This is negative 25 and this is positive 25. Got to be really careful with that. And is this a negative or a positive number? The negative to the third power would be negative times that negative would be positive, okay? What about this one, though? Okay, here, let me do this. Yeah. This is the one... Yeah, this is the one everybody wants to take and make these 8 or something, or cancel the negatives. And this should turn out negative, right? Because a negative 4 to the 4th should be positive times that negative on the front. Okay. All right. Off track. Let's keep going. Recursive. What do you have to tell me for recursive? A sub n equals previous term times... What's R? Okay, you can put that in parentheses if you want. Just make sure you know that little n sub 1 is a subscript. And you also have to tell me the first term, which happens to be 3. All right, explicit for this one. There's so many 3's on this worksheet, isn't even funny. I don't know what. A sub n equals A sub n minus 1 times negative 2. Don't have to have parentheses, but I like them when I have a negative. A sub 1 equals 3. Good job. That's what I feel like. There was 2 that, did we already do those 2 that were the same question? Maybe not yet. These 2, 22 and 23, are the same sequence. One is negatives and one is positives. I didn't do a very good job. This is a computer-generated worksheet, and you can, like, change the questions if they're too similar. Yeah, I didn't pay attention. All right, so recursive formula here. Do we know the first term? That's the first term, right? And this is the ratio. So A sub n equals A sub n minus 1. What are we multiplying by? Negative 5, where A sub 1 is 0.4 or 0.4. And 21? A recursive formula does not always have that power. A recursive formula actually could look like this, guys. 7 to the n. How would you write that as an explicit formula? How would you find the first term? Plug in 1, so you'd get 7. And what are they multiplying every time? Yep. Okay, but it doesn't have to have an n minus 1 power. All right, find the term named in the problem and the explicit formula. It doesn't matter what order we do that. Can we find the 12th term first? How would we do that? How many times would you have to multiply by something? 11 times. So the first term times r 11 times would give us the 12th term. So negative 1 times, what's our r? 3 11 times is it like 177? That number shows up several times on this worksheet. Negative 177147. Explicit term. Explicit formula, I mean, sorry. A sub n equals negative 1 times 3 to the n minus 1. Is there a shorter way to write that? I could leave out the 1 and just put a negative out there, I guess, but yeah, not really. Okay. Hint, same problem, but this time the first term is positive, right? And we only need the 11th term. Can we write the explicit one first this time? So we'd say the first term times what? To the n minus 1. Do we need that one on the outside? No. Because multiplying by 1 does nothing. But a to the 11, how could we find that? 1 times 3 to the 11 minus 1, or 10th. 3 to the 10th is another big number, right? 59,000 something? Someone else get that? Okay. All right. If you've been sleeping, now would be the time to wake up. Don't everybody look at Donovan.
What the heck?
Okay, these last 4 are the only ones that you have to do a little bit of thinking. This one, they do nicely give us the first term. So there was a 3. He was multiplied by something. That was the second term. He was multiplied by something again and became the third term. And then he was multiplied by something again and became the 4th term of 24. Now, some of you can probably do guess and check. Okay. How many not differences? Ratios. How many times did they multiply by r and it's not 4? Yes. Between term 1 and term 4, they multiplied by r 3 times. So 3 was multiplied by r, and r to become 24. Or 3r to the 3rd is 24. If we divide, we get 8, and we cube root and get 2. Most of you figured that out by guess and check, but are they all going to be that easy? Of course not. All right. So we're multiplying by 2. How do we get to the 11th term? Oh, we have to write the explicit anyway. So a sub n equals 3 times 2 to the n minus 1. So if we want the 11th term, we're going to do 3 times 2 to the 10th. I got 3072. Anybody else get that number? Okay. This next one, just, if they could throw anything in, they did. It's got fractions. It's got negative and a positive. It also doesn't give us what? The first term. Okay. So there was a first term. Little story time here. Second term's name was negative 4/3. Then there was a third term and a fourth term. And then there was a fifth term whose name was 4/81. Okay. So how many times did we multiply from the second term to the fifth term? So negative 43rd was multiplied by some ratio 3 times and became 4/81. How do you get rid of this? Multiply by the reciprocal, you get negative 1/27. Can you cube root a negative number? That's caused trouble all day, guys. No. Square root, or fourth root, or sixth root a negative number and you get an imaginary answer. But it's possible to cube root a negative because a negative to the third power is just a negative, right? A negative to an odd power. So as long as we're taking the odd root of a negative, we're just going to get a negative. So what is the cubed root of negative 1/27? Negative 1/3. Everybody okay? All right, so if we wanted to fill in these blanks up here, we could go times negative 1/3 would be positive 4/9, times negative 1/3 would be negative 4/27. How are we going to go backwards to find the first term, though? Okay, multiply by the reciprocal. So we ended up starting with positive 4. Everybody okay? Or you could take negative 4/3 and divide it by that ratio. And you get 4. And that's the first term. Okay. Now what? We're supposed to find the explicit form. And the 12th term. We didn't do anything we're supposed to yet. A sub n equals 4 times negative 1/3 Cn minus 1. Now, this one is a hot mess when you try to type it in the calculator, I think. Gives you scientific notation. Thanks. But if we think about the fraction, 4 over negative 1 is being raised to the 11th, and so is down here 3 being raised to the 11th. What's negative 1 to the 11th? Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4. But down here, 3 to the 11th, can we just type that in to get the denominator? That 177,147 number again? Okay. So A sub 12 was this mess. We could have kind of guessed if you looked at our list we wound up with, right? That the top was going to be 4 or negative 4. Okay, 2 more. Easier or harder? They don't actually get a lot harder. Actually, the last one's pretty easy. But this one, they tried to trick us now by giving us a sub 6 and then a sub 3. So there's a first term, a second term, a negative 27, a fourth term, a fifth term, and a negative 729. But again, these are 3 terms apart. So negative 27 was multiplied by our 3 times and became negative 729. If we divide, we get, I'm guessing 27. Because the cubed root of 27 is 3, and that's their favorite ratio for every problem today, right? Okay, explicit form, uh-oh. We need the first term. Can we just divide by 3 a couple times? Divide by 3 is negative 9. Divide by 3 is negative 3. Does that seem okay? Negative 81, negative 243, if we can fill them all in if we need to. Just checking that it's working. So what's the explicit form look like? First term times 3n minus 1. Is there a shorter way we could write that? Anybody know of an equivalent way? this would be -3 or positive, an outside a negative and a 1 here times a 3 to the n minus 1. If we added those, we'd have opposite of 3 to the n, or you wouldn't even need the parentheses. But yeah, I don't care. All right, what do we need? Lastly, we need to put in the 12th term. So -3 times 3 to the 11th. It's even bigger than that 177 number, right? All right, last one. Easy, Faisal says, because we know the first term. What's the first term? 1.5. And they multiplied by r how many times again? 3 times again and got to 12. 12 divided by 1.5 is 8. Oh my goodness, it's not 3 this time. What's the cubed root of 8? 2. So the formula is a sub n equals? Yep, they gave us the first term, thankfully. 1.5 times 2 to the n minus 1, and we need to put in an 11. 1.5 times 2 to the 10th, Faisal said 1536. And we should always trust Faisal. Okay, your assignment is to do worksheet 4. And these are due Friday. Tomorrow, we meet in East 130. And we have a work day. You can work on worksheet 12, which is the review for Wednesday's quiz. Or you can work on worksheet 2, 4 in the packet, which are all due Friday. You also have a homework check tomorrow. No, Wednesday. Wednesday. No, it's not tomorrow, it's Wednesday. So you can work on stuff for the homework check if you're not caught up. Does anybody have a question?